Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's also good to be back at the podium as well for the second time. So thank you again for your very kind invitation. It's wonderful to be here and to take part. So I just want to, on behalf of a team of the researchers that I'm here partly representing, and indeed so is including Kevin from the UK, from Leicester University, a project that we've been carrying out in collaboration, for UK-Russian collaboration, again funded in this case entirely by the United Kingdom Natural Environment Research Council, who are very keen to fund excellent research anywhere in the world, and we were lucky enough to very easily convince them that this was a great part of the world to be. And for the last 2 and a bit years, we're finished in 2020, a bit like Gareth, we are very interested in carrying out some research that has been led by Dr. Kirsten Barrett from the University of Leicester, where Kevin is also from, of course. And her background is very much from I think she was in the United States Geological Service, and has been interested for a long time in terms of forest fire recovery and loss, either in Alaska, Canada, and now with a very good colleague, Dr. Yelena Kukavskaya from the Sokochov Institute of Forest in Krasnoyarsk. And I was lucky enough to be asked to join as a plant ecologist, a ground-based person, as you've seen in Gareth's presentation, because again we wanted to combine both Earth observation with ground-based ecological measurements and of soils and of plants to look at this issue of basically post-fire forest recruitment. We've heard that in the talks again this morning, quite a great deal, and indeed yesterday. So we've been working with the Sokochov, and to address these parts of this very complex process that people have been speaking about yesterday and today, and this idea that there are many things happening at different latitudes in relation to northern Eurasia, either in the high north, the subpolar north, or indeed where we're working further to the south at the southern edge of the boreal forest. And there are a lot of complex questions that are coming up time and again in the last 2 days, and they are very interesting but very challenging. And I think there's a great deal of opportunity for much more continued work across all the regions of Russia, most certainly. So the motivation, a nice piece of work from Chibakova et al. In 2009, and this idea again of the green here is a tundra to forest change predictions, and yellow being the forest to steppe in the southern parts of the boreal in Russia. And you can see in this area here, which is the area we've been very interested in, this is where we are working around, basing ourselves close to Chita, and working westwards across to Ulan-Ude and across to the eastern shores of Lake Baikal. And from 2 very nice papers again, we can see the motivation again of boreal and biome transitions and boreal loss in different ways. And we're very interested then in, as many people in this room are, is understanding the potential recovery trajectories of fire, post-fire, in terms of forest regeneration or not, or degrees of regeneration, and also the drivers of the potential climate change that may be affecting those processes. So I say, led by Kirsten, working in the Zabaikalsky Krai, and here we have some particular interesting issues in some ways in relation. I'd like to speak with people more about this, is that of course in these regions not only do we have fire and the importance of fire return interval, fire severity, which we've seen is changing in the recent decades from those great talks earlier this morning, but also we have man, of course, and we are in various parts either remote from or closer to man. And one of the issues in these systems, again, is how much anthropogenic, shall we say, activities post-fire that may take advantage of logging, as indeed it happens in Canada locally as well, in places of what information are we left with in some areas where there have been burns. Do we have stumps of trees that we can look for the fire scars that Professor Vaganov and others were looking at earlier today in terms of the fire scar history? And sometimes the record is not totally complete, and so we are looking at of what sorts of ecological information we might combine with Earth observation to look at some of these issues. And it's really this issue, if you like, and we can debate the terms, but basically some fires of a similar extent under certain conditions which are then recruiting abundantly, which are recruiting well through succession over time, through space. Some which do okay, but don't seem to return to the same stocking densities that they were, what we assume, or we can measure that they were before the fire, and of course the potential where we don't get this at all. And this key question that many people in this room are interested in as well is, where do we have recruitment? Where do we maintain our forests over time with the climate changing compared to whether we then change? And is this part of a southern edge transition zone of steppe lands and grasslands with forest? And so using a whole range of different situations, and you can see some of them here in terms of NDVI, the moisture indices, burn ratio indices, and indeed some of the issues that seem to be coming out quite interestingly in the early days of analysis of what's happening in winter in terms of what looks different in these different systems. Hasn't come out so well, sorry. This was sent to me by Kirsten. I didn't get a chance to put, with my crayons, to put in colour. But basically, we're trying to classify these things simply in the first instance into, again, those areas which are poorly recruiting back. I should say, sorry, and the forest that we're looking at in this region, the type really is pine. My apologies, I should have said that. And pine, where we've tried to constrain things in terms of slope degree, angle, aspect. So south to southwest aspect as well. Very interested also in larch and other systems, but obviously we wanted to take a small bite at the problem in this situation, and particularly that in the south. So Kirsten, leading with Kirsten and with Kevin and Heiko Balzer, another very important person that has worked a great deal, as you will have known, in Siberia too, and all those things in Russia for a long, long time, who sadly can't be with us. But looking at some of these issues, remotely, so NDVIs, all those things, there's some very important use of Earth observation driving this. And I'm here really, like I said yesterday, as a person who's using ecology to try to tie together that scaling issues we've already talked about. And just to give you some early idea of this in terms of growing season NDVI in this case, or growing season moisture index changes, in 69 sites that we've chosen, there are some which are recruiting well, some which are not. We are still struggling sometimes to get exact date of burn, but we are working with that with the Krasnoyarsk team. But this idea then that we see a burn, and then we have these different potential trajectories of either recovery or state change in these systems. And this is just early data, but they give you some idea, I hope, of the sort of interest that we have in these areas. And initial results in this situation here, looking now at abundantly versus poor, taking away the intermediate at the moment, but just looking at the two extremes, then in some cases, particularly in winter indices, we have NDVI again, moisture, but a burn ratio. But one of the issues here is in terms of snow and snow lie. This is a region, from our limited experience so far, but with data from Krasnoyarsk people and locally, of low snow. Very continental in a sense, not very much snow deposition in these regions, very cold in winter. We're still looking at that, but there seems to be then some issue there in terms of snow lie in winter that may be an issue that we should be looking at more. And then the sort of things, looking at, again, stocking densities, basal areas, pre and post fire in these systems to again try to quantify the sorts of systems that we're dealing with, that we're looking at. And then working with our colleagues, Yelena Kukuskaya is on the far right of this image, with Olga and Ludmila from the university in Krasnoyarsk, and then some guys. And they're brilliant ecologists, and I have learnt a massive amount of botany again. They understand things very, very quickly in terms of every organism that's there. It's wonderful to work with them. And then tying this all together, we're trying also to understand as we have these different sites going from east to west here, using things like twin span, a way of an ordination device, a way of being able to do this. And finally, what are we trying to do? Tackle these spatial issues, tackle understandings of ecological processes, scaling issues again that come up time and again in much of what everybody in this room is interested in. Thank you very much.